Welcome back to Threads of History, where we pull out the stitches of the past to uncover the bigger story.
Today, we're digging deep into one of the bloodiest days in American history, the Battle of Antietam, and exploring how the chaos of that battlefield was made even worse by something as simple as what the soldiers were wearing.
Alright, let's set the scene. It's September of 1862. The Civil War has been raging for over a year. Robert E. Lee decides to take the fight into the North, a huge gamble.
Exactly. He crosses into Maryland, hoping to win a victory on Union soil that might turn the tide. Maybe get Britain or France to recognize the Confederacy. Maybe even get Maryland to join the South.
Meanwhile, Union General George McClellan gets lucky. He gets his hand on Lee's battle plans, literally wrapped around some cigars left behind at the Confederate camp.
Yeah, the famous last order. McClellan knows Lee's army is divided, but still moves cautiously. He could have crushed Lee, but instead, Antietam becomes this horrific slugfest.
The battle itself unfolds in three brutal phases: morning fighting at the Cornfield, midday slaughter at the Sunken Road, also called Bloody Lane, and afternoon bloodshed at Burnside's Bridge.
Each phase just bleeds into the next. The Cornfield alone changed hands over a dozen times. Soldiers were charging through standing corn, unsure who was waiting for them on the other side.
And with the smoke, the shouting, the noise, uniforms became a huge problem. At Antietam, color confusion led to friendly fire again and again.
Blue coats, gray coats, brown coats, mixed gear savaged the dead. You could have been shot by your own side in seconds if you weren't careful.
You really get a sense of confusion when you read the soldiers' own words. Private David Thompson of the 9th New York wrote that Antietam's cornfield was so covered with the dead and wounded that it was almost impossible to walk without stepping on bodies.
Another soldier described seeing men cheering wildly and then dropping dead before their cheers were finished.
And letters home often mentioned the uniforms. One soldier wrote that he almost fired on his own brother's regiment because the colors were so similar in the morning fog.
Terrifying. And it just shows how badly armies needed a better way to identify friend from foe. This is a desperate problem that needed to be solved quickly.
After Antietam, the Union Army realized they had to fix this. They pushed hard for standardized dark blue uniforms across the entire army.
They also introduced corps badges, little shapes sewn onto hats or jackets. Each corps had a different color and symbol, just like a red diamond or a blue circle.
Regimental flags became an even important part too. In the chaos of the battle, your flag was one of the things you could rally around, even if you couldn't recognize your friend's face.
It wasn't just about looking sharp, it was about survival. You needed to know who are my brothers, who's the enemy, and to do this, you would look at their flag or badge.
Speaking of confusion, uniforms also became tools of deception. There are multiple cases of Confederate soldiers dressing in Union blue to sneak behind lines.
It wasn't just random either. Confederate General John S. Mosby, the Great Ghost, had men who specialized in disguises and raids.
And Union soldiers caught in enemy colors could be, and often were, executed as spies.
Just another reason uniforms weren't just a fashion choice. They were a matter of life and death, legally and literally.
Zooming back out, why does Antietam really matter?
Because it gave Lincoln the win he needed to issue the Emancipation Proclamation.
Without Antietam, Lincoln might have waited. He needed to show the Union could still win before making the war about ending slavery.
Once the proclamation came out, it changed everything. It kept Britain and France from recognizing the Confederacy and made freedom a central cause of the war.
In a way, those ragtag armies, confused uniforms and all, helped change the moral heart of the United States.
And the lessons, they didn't just stay in the 1860s. Modern militaries still obsess over clear identification. Patches, camo patterns, team markings.
Because in battle, knowing who's who saves lives. And it's a lesson we can trace straight back to places like Antietam's Cornfield and Bloody Lane.
Even today, a soldier's uniform isn't just clothes, it's identity, it's loyalty, it's survival, it's life.
The Battle of Antietam wasn't just a clash of armies. It was a clash of confusion, hope, death, and rebirth.
From the blood-soaked cornfields to the ragged uniforms, the story of Antietam reminds us sometimes history turns on the tiniest details. A patch of color, a scrap of cloth, a line of stitching.
Thanks for joining us today on Threads of History. Next time, we're diving into the world of Civil War spies, invisible battles fought in the shadows.
Until then, stay curious and stay connected to the threads that made us who we are.
Before we wrap up this episode, I want to take a moment to credit the sources that helped shape today's discussion about the Battle of Antietam and Civil War uniforms. To understand the structure and organization of the Union and Confederate armies, I relied on the article Civil War Army Organization from the American Battlefield Trust, which helped explain how soldiers were grouped into regiments, brigades, divisions, and corps. The detailed overview, the Battle of Antietam, also from the American Battlefield Trust, provided critical information about troop movements, casualty numbers, and the three major phases of the battle: the Cornfield, the Sunken Road, and the Burnside Bridge. For the maps and battle geography, I used resources from the National Park Service Antietam Battle Maps page, which gave me a clear understanding of how the fighting moved across the terrain. I also used their article, A Short Overview of the Battle of Antietam, which summarized the causes, progress, and the consequences of the battle, including Lee's retreat and Lincoln's political timing. For the uniform segment, I referred to articles and exhibits from the Smithsonian National Museum and American History and general scholarship from the American Battlefield Trust. These sources explained how early in the war, uniform standards were inconsistent, leading to confusion and even friendly fire. To capture the experience of soldiers on the battlefield, I incorporated summaries and quotes from primary source letters and diaries available through public archives like the Library of Congress and Civil War Trust. These first-hand accounts provided vivid detail on both uniform issues and battlefield conditions. Finally, for the broader political impact of the Battle of Antietam, especially how it allowed President Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation and discourage European powers from the supporting Confederacy, I used historical context from the Library of Congress's Civil War collections. These sources were essential to crafting an accurate and engaging retelling of one of the most significant battles in American history. I encourage you to check them out for yourself. They offer powerful insights and a wealth of knowledge about the Civil War. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you'll join me next time as we continue exploring the threads that connect America's past to its present.